There I was, just chilling, enjoying my Friday evening, sat on the couch, pretending to be the Call of Duty Black Ops guy, when my phone pings, and I get a recommended post from Twitter saying, "Hey, have you seen this post?" Already has the makings of my favourite possible things in a post, mentions of the Persona series, and Polygon. So I thought, fuck it, let's give the article a read. What possible psychic damage could it do to me that I have not already done through hours of doom scrolling through Twitter around any kind of Persona news? I'm worried about the Persona 3 remake. How faithful should this remake really be? By Chelsea Stark. On its face, Persona 3 Reload is such a tantalizing idea, bringing the series' defining game up to the polish of Persona 5 Royal, allowing the legions of newly converted Persona fans to experience what makes it so special. As I said when I reviewed the Persona 3 remaster of Portable earlier this year, it takes work to get to the end, but the complicated, messy, weird story is worth it, which is true. But after playing a small slice of the game at a New York-based preview event, I have some concerns, namely about whether Persona 3 Reload might struggle to strike the balance between being an accurate remake while still upholding what players would expect from a modern Persona title. I'll say that some of these feelings sprang from my surprise that Atlus is choosing to remake the original version of Persona 3. This was before 2009's Persona 3 Portable got a playable female protagonist, with her own social links and romance options. That has never carried into a later version of Persona, even as each version received a massive game-defining re-release that renders the original nearly obsolete. The cynical part me wonders if they'll do the same with Reload, add in a female protagonist 3 to 5 years later in Persona 3 Reload Ultra Deluxe, but that seems like a recipe for fan frustration, which, agreed, they're kind of picking and choosing what they want to include in P3 Reload from FES and from other versions of P3. Like the Aegis social link from FES is going to be in the game, which is cool, but really this was the opportunity to make a super definitive version of Persona 3, and it's really not going to be that without the option to play as the female protagonist, I feel like. But I still strapped in for the 30-minute demo, which included 2 slices. New Moon, which let me explore the starting floors of the procedurally generated multi-floor dungeon in Tartarus in all its remade glory, and Full Moon, which put me up against the first boss in its story. The visual facelifts extend to the menus, which are updated with the same splashy treatment as Persona 5, while still adhering to Persona 3's blue dominant color palette, seeing both the Tartarus entrance hall and runaway monorail platform with new backgrounds and a higher frame rate was a treat. But both areas were remarkably empty. Okay. I mean, what do you want to be put in either Tartarus rooms or the monorail? What do you expect to see in them is my question. Like, what do you want to include in them? Because the monorail is, you can only put so much in a monorail. It's a monorail. It's a train carriage. Tartarus is just Tartarus. It's like procedurally generated rooms, never the same, etc., etc. They're empty, maybe, if you look at it that way, but they don't necessarily need to be overly complex. And mainly the theming of Tartarus itself is usually pretty damn good. So I'm starting to get a little bit lost with the article, but that's fine. I believe in you, Chelsea. We can get through this. Tartarus is the genesis for Persona 4's dungeons, and is closer to Persona 5's repetitive memento stages rather than its complex palaces, but seeing its hallways rendered from a new perspective, more of an over-the-shoulder 3D rather than the original God Eye view, made the contrast rather stark. There just isn't much going on in Tartarus. It's a twisted version of a high school with a few enemy shadows lurking, and the structure was so repetitive that I got turned around fairly easily. The train battle sends my party down long straight stretches with few visual distinctions and only a couple enemies per section. This hews very close to the original game, but is barren by modern standards. Persona 3 had less going on than later games in the series, but there is something much more striking about that lack of substance modernized. What? Okay, the monorail and train section, I think, is a crock of shit. Looking at this, like, what do you want? What do you want doing with that? I don't get it. What are you after? You know? It's a train. It's a monorail. What do you want like a train conductor being like, this way? Like, huh? What do you want? I don't get it. It feels like a very weird criticism to make. Combat presented me with a mix of old and new. Thankfully, the demo defaulted to letting me control the actions of each of my party members off the bat, which wasn't even an option in the entirety of the original Persona 3. The combat consisted of the same turn-based battles, with easily navigable menus, another credit to Persona 5's new precedent. I noticed that the physical damage was still divided into 3 types, strike, slash, and pierce, which was a system dropped by later games though. I didn't perform a baton pass, but was told by an Atlas representative that the feature has been added to the battles. And Shuffle Time, the post-battle reward system where players must pick their desired loot from a card shuffling shell game, now simply allowed me to select the reward card I wanted. And the strategy of targeting your opponent's weakness with elemental, magic, or physical damage remains the same. It's so familiar, in fact, that I was frustrated I couldn't kill the final boss quickly. She is difficult, just like in the original, unless you're like me and grind to over-prepare for every boss fight. Well, that's good. I'm glad they've not fucked up the difficulty of the actual like early game too much. Baton pass, cool. Shuffle time, cool. Damage types, cool. No issue with this paragraph, to be honest with you. This is fine. Although I don't necessarily think P3 or P4's menus weren't easily navigable. I thought they were pretty straightforward. I mean, maybe they just mean stylish, in which case you can say that it's a more stylish menu, but like didn't think P3 or P4 had difficult to navigate menus. That kind of sounds like a skill issue. Future Rob here again. Just went back through and had a look at the battle menus for P4 and P3. They're more or less the same. They're just absolutely not difficult to navigate at all. So, Chelsea, run this one by me again. Why? What's the issue? Are we talking about stylization or are we talking about ease of use? Because ain't nothing wrong with these ones. I don't want to extrapolate too much from my demo because I didn't see any aspects of the daytime gameplay, the school, social links, or after-school activities. But one of the prevailing complaints when playing Persona 3 Portable's remaster was the lack of variety in its daily life segments when stacked up against other games. Will Atlas remain faithful to the core text or add in the robust level of activities and social links someone coming from Persona 5 will expect? Persona 3's story is dark and impactful, but it was originally told within confines of certain gameplay conceits. I worry that the task of remaining faithful to the original will preclude the things that I expect from a modern RPG. Persona 3 Reload is February 2nd, 2024, and its announced platforms include PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, Windows PC, Xbox Series X, blah 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 blah. Interesting. Very interesting. Hey, Future Rob here, back again for probably the bulk of and the remaining part of this video because I kind of ramble for 10 to 15 minutes, rather unceremoniously and rather unfocusedly on why I disagree with both the Wikipedia article and the comments made by Chelsea. But now looking back on this like 2 days later, where I've had the weekend to sort of stew over the article and my thoughts on it, I can see that looking back on the original recording, I'm pretty off base with my literacy and understanding of what Chelsea Stark's critique has been. So, yes, it's pretty clear that she has compared Persona 3 to Persona 5 and has gone, Tartarus does not have as much as the modern standard as set by Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal, and therefore feels lesser and feels unfinished, is what I'm inferring from that paragraph. Let's break this down thematically first. Persona 5 palaces are representations of the palace ruler's heart. So Kamoshida's got his castle, Okumura's got the space station, Madarami's got the art museum, and the whole idea of those dungeons and the gameplay and the story is that the Phantom Thieves are looking for a way to infiltrate that palace, to navigate that person's heart, to try and steal the treasure, their desires that they keep locked within it. Which, therefore, it makes sense that these dungeons are complex, that there's puzzles to solve, that there's riddles and objectives to meet, because at the end of the day, the whole goal is that you're trying to navigate this person's soul to steal something from it. It makes sense, right? Conversely, Tartarus is a 260 floor behemoth where it is contextually a representation of the underworld from Greek mythos. You know, you got Orpheus, you got Tartarus, you got Thanatos. So it doesn't make sense for Tartarus to have a bunch of bells and whistles to navigate. It's supposed to be a slog. It's supposed to be the main focus of it, while you accomplish the full moon shadows on the side, and then eventually, you know, the other story events and Strega as the story goes on. I think it really cycles back down to my initial reaction for this anyway, which is, what exactly would you add to Tartarus? What exactly would you add to the full moon dungeons in order to make them complex, in order to make them more dynamic as the palaces that we see in Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal? What is it that you're expecting to see within Tartarus, you know? If you were to implement gameplay elements like puzzle solving as you'd expect to see in Persona 5 into Tartarus in P3 Reload, you'd find that the execution would not be as effective, because you would have to have consistent, constant rooms. You'd have to have permanent rooms, essentially. You wouldn't be able to have procedurally generated, because a lot of the Persona 5 problem solving relies on backtracking through the dungeon, picking up an object from this room, taking it to that room, fast traveling from here, there to everywhere. And that would fundamentally change how Tartarus is built, because it is procedurally generated. It's supposed to be an ever-shifting labyrinth. So, in conclusion, this whole paragraph is a crock of shit, and I don't agree with it at all. It feels like a criticism that's been made for criticism's sake and to try and drive reactions without trying to truly understand or factor in the context of Persona 3, the narrative of Persona 3, and understanding why things are built the way that they are in the game. Yeah, obviously hardware limitations of the time probably lent a hand to it, but just because we don't have those hardware limitations now doesn't mean that we should completely shift the tone, the theme of the gameplay itself just to try and modernize the game for modernization's sake. It seems a bit redundant, and it seems like a good recipe to piss people off and to alienate old fans of the series. Wikipedia article, unfortunately, correct. That is what this article says. And in conclusion, Polygon bad. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching. Drop a sub if you fancy subscribing. I'm gonna go and have a big fat sleep, because I was awake at 7 AM last night. Peace.